welcome everyone to the Drishti IAS English YouTube channel. I'm Pragya. As you all are aware, we are running this Target UPSC 2024 Prelims MCQs practice series. In this discussion today, we'll be discussing the MCQs from the subject of polity, set 5. Let us begin with our discussion today. The first question of our today's discussion is, with reference to the Legislative Council, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is 1/6 of the members are nominated by the governor from amongst the persons who have special knowledge or practical experience of literature, science, art, cooperative movement and social service. Your statement number 2 is the Constitution has not provided for the maximum and minimum strength limit of legislative councils. Your statement number 3 is 1/3 of the total members are elected by graduates of 3 years standing and residing within the state. How many of the statements given above are correct? Your option A is only 1. Your option B is only 2. Your option C is all 3 statements are correct. And your option D is none of these statements are correct. So the correct answer for this question is going to be only one statement is correct. Article 171 of our Indian Constitution provides for the composition of the legislative councils. Out of the total membership of council, 5/6 are indirectly elected, whereas 1/6 are nominated by the governor from amongst the people who have special knowledge and practical experience of literature, art, science, cooperative movement and social service. The Constitution has fixed the maximum and minimum strength of the Legislative Council, but the actual strength is fixed by the Parliament of India. The maximum strength is fixed at 1/3 of the total strength of assembly, and minimum strength is fixed at 40. And that is why your statement number 2 is incorrect in nature. Now let us study about the Legislative Council. So basically, if you talk about the Legislative Council, it resembles the Rajya Sabha or the upper house in the states. You have the state legislative assembly and then you have the second body, namely as the Legislative Council. Kindly let me know in the comment box below the states which are bicameral in legislation. Okay, the states which possess this bicameral structure. So if you talk about the Legislative Council, 1/3 are elected by members of local bodies in the state like municipalities, district boards, etc. 1/12 are elected by graduates of 3 years standing and residing within the state, and that is why your statement number 3 is also incorrect in nature. It is not 1/3, rather it is 1/12. 1/12 are elected by teachers of 3 years standing in the state, and 1/3 are elected by members of the Legislative Assembly of states from these persons who are not the members of Legislative Assembly, and therefore your correct answer for this question is option A. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the Constitution provides that if a person holds office of profit under union or state government, he shall be disqualified for being chosen as a member of the Legislative Assembly. So the key words here are office of profit under union or state shall be disqualified. And your statement number 2 is, for the disqualification of a member of the Legislative Assembly under office of profit, the decision of the speaker is final. Which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 only. Option B is 2 only. Option C is both 1 and 2. And option D is neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option A, 1 only. The expression office of profit has nowhere been defined in our Indian Constitution or in the Representation of People Act of 1951. If I talk about it in very simple terms, it relates to an MLA or an MP holding government office and receiving benefits from it. The law does not clearly define what constitutes an office of profit, but the definition has evolved over the years with the interpretations made in the various court judgments. An office of profit has been interpreted to be a position that brings to the office holder some financial gain, advantage or benefit. Advantage or benefit. The amount of such profit is very immaterial in nature. In the 1964, the Honorable Supreme Court of India has ruled that the test for determining whether a person holds an office of profit is the test of appointment. Several factors are considered in this determination, including factors such as factor number 1 is whether the government is the appointing authority. Your factor number 2 is whether the government has the power to terminate the appointment. Then, whether the government determines the remuneration. What is the source of remuneration and the power that comes with the position. The Constitution under Article 191 provides for disqualification of member of Legislative Assembly on the following grounds of firstly, if he holds an office of profit under a union or the state government, and that is why your statement number 1 is correct here. If he is of unsound mind, if he is an undischarged insolvent, and if he is not a citizen of India and acquires any foreign citizenship. So these are the grounds for disqualification that has been mentioned under Article 191 of our Indian Constitution. The article further clarifies that a person shall not be deemed to hold an office of profit under the Government of India or Government of any state by reason only that he is a minister. So this cannot be a reason for saying that the person is holding an office of profit. The essence of disqualification under the office of profit law is if legislators hold an office of profit under the government, they might be susceptible to government influence and may not discharge their constitutional mandate fairly, and that is why they are disqualified if they are holding an office of profit. On the question of disqualification, the governor's decision is final. It is not the speaker, rather it is the governor's decision, and that is why your statement number 2 is not correct. However, he should obtain the opinion of the Election Commission and act accordingly. The question of disqualification under the 10th schedule is decided by the speaker. And we have covered this in detail in our previous session that yes, whose decision is final under the 10th schedule for disqualification on the ground of defection, it is the speaker. But here for disqualification, you requires the governor's decision and not the speaker's decision. But the governor should act in accordance with the opinion of the Election Commission. Now moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the speaker need not accept resignation of member of Legislative Assembly if he is not satisfied that it is voluntary or genuine. Your statement number 2 is, a person cannot be a member of both the houses of state legislature. Your statement number 3 is, the disqualification on grounds of defection is governed by the 9th schedule of the Constitution. How many of the statements given above are correct? Your option A is only 1. Your option B is only 2. Your option C is all 3 statements are correct. And your option D is none of these statements are correct. So the correct answer for this question is going to be only 2. Option B. Only 2 statements given herein are correct. So a member of the Legislative Assembly can resign from his seat by writing to the Speaker of the Assembly. The Speaker need not accept his resignation if he is not satisfied that it is voluntary or genuine. A person cannot be a member of both the houses of the Legislative Assembly. If a person is elected to both the houses, his seat in one house falls vacant, and that is why your statement number 2 here is incorrect in nature. The disqualification on the grounds of defection is governed by the 10th schedule of our Indian Constitution. And 10th schedule was inserted by the 52nd Constitutional Amendment Act, which provides for the disqualification on the ground of defection. The disqualification on grounds of defection is decided by the Speaker, as we have discussed, and Chairman in case of Legislative Council. And that is why your statement 3 here is incorrect in nature. Further, under Article 101 Clause 2 of the Indian Constitution, if a member of state legislatures who have been elected to Lok Sabha, they must resign their seats within 14 days. So a time period of 14 days is given for resignation from the date of publication in the Gazette of India or in the official Gazette of the state, whichever is later, of the declaration that he has been so chosen. Failing which, their seats in the Lok Sabha shall automatically fall vacant. Therefore, the correct answer for this question is option B. Moving forward to the next question. So the question is, with reference to the Advocate General of the state, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, he is appointed by the President on the advice of the Governor of the concerned state. Your statement number 2 is, while the Constitution provides for the Attorney General of India, there is no mention of the Advocate General of the state in the Indian Constitution. Your statement number 3 is, the term of office of Advocate General is not fixed. How many of the statements given above are correct? Your option A is only 1. Your option B is only 2. Your option C is all 3 statements are correct. And your option D is none of the statements given above are correct in nature. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option A. Only one statement is correct. Article 165 of the Indian Constitution specifically mentions about the office of the Advocate General for the state, and he is the first law officer of the state. So basically it is a constitutional post, okay, and that is why your statement number 2 is incorrect in nature. The Advocate General is appointed by the governor, and that is why your statement number is 1 is incorrect in nature. Now let us discuss the essential qualifications for being appointed as an Advocate General for the state. So a person must be qualified to be appointed as a judge of the High Court to become the Advocate General for the state. In other words, he must firstly be a citizen of India and have been an advocate of a High Court for 10 years or have held a judicial office for 10 years. The Constitution has not fixed the term of office for the Advocate General, and neither does it contain the procedure and grounds for his removal. Thus, he holds office during the pleasure of the governor, and that is why your statement number 3 is correct here in nature. He may be removed by the governor at any time. He may also quit his office by submitting his resignation to the governor. Conventionally, he resigns when the government, that is the State Council of Ministers, resigns or is replaced as he is appointed by the governor on the advice of the State Council of Ministers. The remuneration of the Advocate General is also not fixed by the Indian Constitution. He receives such remuneration as the governor may determine, and hence option A is the correct answer for this question. Moving to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly can continue even if the House is dissolved. And your statement number 2 is the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly presides the joint sitting to resolve any kind of deadlock. Your statement number 3 is unlike Speaker of the Lok Sabha, the Speaker of the Legislative Assembly votes in the first instance for passing the bill. How many of the statements given above are correct? Your option A is only 1. Your option B is only 2. Your option C is all 3. And your option D is none of the above. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option A. Only one statement herein is correct. So Article 179 of the Indian Constitution. A member holding office of as Speaker of an Legislative Assembly of a state shall vacate his office if he or she ceases to be a member of the Assembly. However, whenever the Assembly is dissolved, the Speaker shall not vacate his office until immediately before the first meeting of the newly constituted Assembly after the dissolution of the previous one. And that is why your statement number 1 here is correct in nature. Then, the Constitution does not provide for a mechanism of joint sitting of two houses of state legislative assembly for resolving a deadlock. Joint sitting of both the house of the parliament is provided under Article 108 of the Indian Constitution. Let me know in the comment box below who presides over the joint sitting of both the houses of the parliament. Then, the Speaker of the Legislative Council does not vote in the first instance but can exercise a casting vote in the case of a tie. That is why your statement number 3 is incorrect in nature. It is the Speaker of the Legislative Council and not the Legislative Assembly. Hence, option A is your correct answer for this question. Moving to the next question of our today's discussion. So, the question is, with reference to an ordinary bill, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, a deadlock takes place between the two houses of state legislature if the second house does not pass the bill within 6 months. Then your statement number 2 is, there is no provision of joint sitting in case of state legislature. Your statement number 3 is, the mechanism of passing a bill for a second time in case of a state legislature to resolve a deadlock applies to bills originating in the legislative assembly only. Kindly pay attention to these kind of words, not only, because they help you in elimination method. So how many of the statements given above are correct? Your option A is only 1. Your option B is only 2. Your option C is all 3 statements are correct. And your option D is none of the statements given above are correct. So your correct answer for this question is going to be option B. Only 2 statements given above are correct in nature. So basically Article 197 of our Indian Constitution provides the following cases of conflict in the two houses of a state legislature. Firstly, a bill having been passed by the Legislative Assembly is rejected by the Legislative Council in case of a bicameral legislation. Then, a bill having passed by the Legislative Assembly and sent to the Council is not returned by the Legislative Council within 3 months of its receipt in the Council. A bill having been passed by the Legislative Assembly is passed by the Legislative Council with amendment and the amendments were not accepted by the Assembly. And hence your statement number 1 is incorrect in nature. The Constitution does not provide for a mechanism of joint sitting of two houses of state legislature for resolving a deadlock. The State Legislative Council does not enjoy the same power in respect of passing ordinary bill as is exercised by the Rajya Sabha in case of a union bill. And that is why your statement number 2 is correct in nature. The mechanism of passing a bill for the second time to resolve deadlock applies to bills originating in the Legislative Assembly only. The bills originating in the Legislative Council become dead. And that is why your statement number 3 is also correct here. If the ordinary bill is passed for the second time by the Legislative Assembly, with or without amendment proposed by the Legislative Council and is transmitted to the Council, even if the bill is rejected by the Council or if the bill is not returned by the Council within 1 month of its receipt, 1 month of its receipt, or if the bill is passed by the council with amendments to which the legislative assembly does not agree. The bill is deemed to be passed by both the houses of the state legislature, and hence your option B here, only 2, is the correct answer. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question 7 is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the 91st Constitutional Amendment Act freed Bihar from the obligation to have a tribal welfare minister. Your statement number 2 is, the President under Article 342 of our Indian Constitution appoints a tribal welfare minister in the states. Which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 only. Option B is 2 only. Option C is both 1 and 2, and option D is neither 1 nor 2. So your correct answer for this question is going to be option D. None of these statements are correct in nature. See, under Article 164 of our Indian Constitution, 164 of our Indian Constitution, the Chief Minister is appointed by the Governor and the other ministers are appointed by the Governor on the recommendation of the Chief Minister, provided that in the states of Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh and Odisha, there shall be a minister in charge of tribal welfare who may in addition be in charge of the welfare of the scheduled castes and the backward classes or any other work. Earlier, Bihar was also to have a tribal welfare minister, but the 94th Constitutional Amendment Act freed Bihar from this responsibility, and that is why it is not the 91st Constitutional Amendment Act, it is rather the 94th Constitutional Amendment Act. Under Article 342 of the Indian Constitution, the President may, with respect to any state or union territory and where it is a state, after consultation with the governor thereof, by public notification, specify the tribes or tribal communities or parts of or groups within tribes or tribal communities which shall for the purpose of this constitution be deemed to be scheduled tribes. So Article 342 of our Indian Constitution relates with the scheduled tribes, identification of the scheduled tribes, and this power is vested in the hands of the President of India in relation to that state or union territory as the case may be, and that is why both of these statements are incorrect in nature. Proceeding to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question is, arrange the following commissions in ascending order of their formation. So your first commission is Rajmannar Committee. Your second commission is the Pucci Commission. Your third commission is the Sarkaria Commission. And your fourth commission is the Anandpur Sahib proposal. So select the correct answer using the quotes given below. Your option A is 1, 2, 3, 4. Kindly remember it is stating ascending order. So whenever you read these kind of questions, read them very carefully, else there is a huge chance of committing a mistake. You will read it at descending order. So kindly read the question very carefully. And your option B is 2314, option C is 1432, and your option D is 1423. So see here the options are also very confusing. So kindly make a column and solve, like for one, then you'll decide that okay 2 comes, then 3 comes, and then 4 comes. So kindly follow all of these tips so as to have these answers marked very correctly. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option C. 1432. So if you talk about the Rajmannar Committee, it was a center-state relations inquiry committee and it was set up under the chairmanship of Dr. P.V. Rajmannar by the then DMK government of Tamil Nadu in the year 1969. It was constituted to consider the entire question regarding the relationship that should subsist between the center and states in a federal setup. Then if you'll talk about the Anandpur Sahib proposal, Anandpur Sahib resolution of 1973. So see, whenever you are studying about these commissions, the years also become very important. Unfortunately, you'll have to remember all of these years because they often ask these kinds of questions in the examination. Match the following, ascending, descending. So that is why for the important commissions, the years also should be remembered by you. Stated that the center's jurisdiction should be limited to defense, foreign relations, currency and general administration. So these were the suggestions made by the Anandpur Sahib proposal. If you talk about the Sarkaria Commission, very important commission on the center-state relationship. The central government in 1983 appointed Sarkaria Commission to examine and review the working of existing center-state relation and suggest necessary changes. And then comes the Pucci Commission, a three-member commission headed by the former Chief Justice of India, M.M. Pucci, was set up in the year 2007 by the Government of India to take a fresh look at relative roles and responsibilities of various levels of government and their interrelations. And that is why your correct answer for this question is option C. Moving forward to the next question of our today's discussion. So the question number 9 is, consider the following statements. Your statement number 1 is, the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution falls under Part 20 of the Indian Constitution. Your statement number 2 is, Parliament has unlimited amending power. So which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 only. Your option B is 2 only. Your option C is both 1 and 2. And your option D is neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer, as you have guessed rightly, I'm assuming this, your option A, 1 only. Because anyone can say, if they have studied, that no, Parliament has not unlimited amending power. Parliament cannot amend the basic structure of our Indian Constitution. So, Article 368 in Part 20 of the Indian Constitution deals with the power of Parliament to amend the Constitution. Article 368. It says, notwithstanding anything in this constitution, Parliament may, in the exercise of its constituent power, amend by way of addition, variation, or repeal any provision of this constitution in accordance with the procedure laid down in this article. And basic structure doctrine was evolved by the Honorable Supreme Court in the Keshwanand Bharti case. And after this evolution, the Parliament does not have the power to amend the basic structure of the Indian Constitution or the foundational principles on which the Indian Constitution is based. Okay. And that is why the correct answer is going to be option A, 1 only. Now let us discuss the 10th question of our today's discussion. So the question is, consider the following statements. So in the presidential form of government, President acts both as the head of the government and the head of the state. Your statement number 2 is, the doctrine of separation of power is the basis of parliamentary form of government. Which of these statements given above are correct? Your option A is 1 only. Your option B is 2 only. Your option C is both 1 and 2 and your option D is neither 1 nor 2. So the correct answer for this question is going to be option A, 1 only. If you talk about the presidential form of government, the president acts as the head of state or the de jure executive. as well as the head of the government. That means the de facto executive. And this is the major difference between the presidential form of government and the parliamentary form of government. In this system, the office of president is very powerful both in theory as well as in practice. Countries with such a system include the United States of America, United States of America, Brazil, and most nations in Latin America. They follow the presidential form of government. The president is not accountable to the legislature, unlike in the parliamentary form of government, where head of the government is accountable to the legislature. And that is why your statement number 1 is correct in nature. The doctrine of separation of powers is the basis of the presidential system of government. In parliamentary form, executive is the part of the legislature. And that is why your statement number 2 is incorrect in nature. And that is why option A, one only statement herein is correct as your right answer for the today's question. Now let us discuss a practice question for your today's session. So the question is, with reference to the constitutional amendment, consider the following pairs. List 1, option 1, abolition or creation of legislative council, simple majority. Fundamental rights, special majority. Second schedule, special majority. So which of the pairs given above are correctly matched? Option A, 2 only. Option B, 1 and 2 only. Option C, 2 and 3 only. And option D is 1, 2 and 3. And this answer will be given by you to me in the comment box below. I hope this session was insightful for you. If you have any feedback regarding this session, go and drop it in the comment box below. If you liked today's discussion and found it to be helpful, kindly like the video and subscribe to our channel for more such interesting updates. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.